Panel 1 is here to talk to us about the problem and what we could do if we had broadband on the west side. And so I'm pleased to introduce to you our moderator, Dennis Donahue, and our panelists for Panel 1, Terry Brase, Carl Longley, Davina Witcher, and Jeff Mitchell. Please join me in welcoming them.
Good morning. She was ready to go with the mom's voice, so we would have all snapped too. So anyway, it's terrific to be here. You've got a good group of folks to hear from. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to make a quick industry comment, and then we'll start with Terry coming up. Each of the panelists will come up. We won't be strict constructionists, but within the 5 to 7 minute range, introduce themselves. Each of them has a few slides. They'll do that. They go back, and then we'll go into a moderated Q&A. And I can tell this is an inquisitive crowd, and I'm going to guess there's going to be a few questions, and we want to make sure we accommodate that. Just very, very quickly, what I would like to underscore in my current role as the director of Western Growers Innovation Center. Western Growers is a unique organization. Its membership is primarily California and Arizona, and it supplies over 50+%, and depending upon the time of the year, that can sneak up to 90 to 100%, depending upon the crop, of North America's fresh fruits, vegetables, and nuts. In order to get that done, because most of these organizations are year-round marketeers, we're operating in 32 states and 30 countries. So it underscores a little bit of what you've heard, particularly from Assemblymember Caballero. It looks local, it feels regional, but it's global. And ours is an industry that moves around the entire globe. And so the ability to function, and the thing I would like to throw in on behalf of public-private, what private needs, and one of the reasons we committed to an innovation center now working with some 50 different companies. Companies need to scale, whether they're big or small, their new technology offerings. So it's critical to scale, and scaling is what draws investment. And so what Gabe talked about in terms of what's the public contribution, in order for the private contribution to work, there needs to be real opportunity. And then the other thing is the fundamental purpose of the center is we want to solve what we identified as the 3 macro industry issues a couple years ago. Food safety ongoing, requires information. Labor, automation, requires the Internet of Things. And then water, and you've heard some of the regulatory and compliance issues, all requiring information. Growers, on the surface, while we like seasons and somewhat don't like things to change, when we want to change things, we want it fast. So our desire is to solve these problems as quickly as possible. And what's important in my last comment is that when the industry comes together, as it did, for instance, around the food safety crisis in 2006, within 6 months you had arguably one of the best examples of a public-private partnership the nation's ever seen in terms of industry working with the California Department of Food and Agriculture around E. coli, resulting in the Leafy Green Marketing Association. And there are many who believe that that's really served as the underpinning of the nation's Food Safety Modernization Act. So it's important that industry plays. We want to do that. That's why I'm here, and that's why Western Growers has been pleased to be part of this group. And with that, I'll call Terry up, and you're on.
Thank you, Dennis. My name is Terry Brase, and I'm the interim director of the Farm of the Future at West Hills College. And I think what we're doing here, this part of the conference, is setting the stage, establishing the need. And one of the things that we did to establish the need is we had a group of students that went out and interviewed growers. We had 3 students. We sat down with the growers and asked them a series of 3 questions. 5 questions that established: what access do you have broadband? How do you use it? How would you use it? The students recorded the answers, and that was published as a qualitative study. Okay. We had 15 to 20 growers that we were going to interview, but actually after about 7 or 9 growers, we were getting the same types of answers. Okay. And at this time, I'd like to introduce a few of our students that are in the audience. We have Philip Welk. Stand up. Stand up. Austin Lopez, Drew Madden, and Alyssa Trevino. Okay, so these students represent the agriculture department and representative of the types of students that we have in the ag department and on the farm of the future. I'm going to ask Philip here. Everybody else can have a seat, but I'm going to ask Philip since he's one of the students that participated in the study. Okay, so he's one of these that you see in this picture here and actually talked with the farmers. And the growers responded very well. They opened up to, I think, Philip and the other students and gave some very honest replies. So, Philip, could you just tell the audience a little bit about the types of responses that we heard from those growers?
So basically, we got the same responses from almost all of them. It was very poor service, and it's unfortunate in their homes, offices, and in the fields. So needs to be improved, and some didn't even have it at all. So sad, I guess, but yeah.
Thank you. And it's, like I said, we're kind of preaching to the choir, so it's pretty much recognized it's poor. Really what we're after is the impact. What kind of impact does that have? And we had Kyle Kreider from West Hills try to quantify some of this data. And I think the most important thing is this item right here. Use of ag tech impeded by the lack of broadband. In other words, 71% of the responses we received, or 71% of those growers, specifically said that their use of technology was impeded because they did not have that broadband. Okay, and that is a significant amount. And it's significant in the fact that they are not able to use that technology, some of the technology we're going to be talking about here. Now, the other side of it is that there's 29%, the other 29%, you might infer that it means that those are the growers that are using technology. Actually, those other 29% are not using technology. It's just that it's not because of the lack of broadband. I think that's an education issue. They were not aware or educated as far as how the technology could be used if they did have broadband. My impression is that there was very few growers that actually were using technology to its full extent, and I would say 100%. It's either because lack of broadband access, or because they didn't know how or how they could effectively use it. So that brings us a little bit to the actual impact. And I'm going to talk about two, I think, major impacts here. One is limiting agriculture technology. And I think that occurs 4 different ways. One, in the communication in the field. The growers were not able to actually communicate with their field workers. If they were out in the field, they were not able to communicate with the office. There's that general lack of communication limits decision-making in real time. It limits the ability to be effective in the field operations. Data management and control. Okay, I think this is probably one of the things that is discussed here most commonly. We're talking about different types of sensors. It might be soil moisture sensors. It might be tree sap flow sensors that you have in the orchard. It could be bar scanners that are used to trace, for traceability, to trace the movement of the food from the field to the table. Okay, that is a movement of data coming in from the field that's lacking. The other type of data is data moving from the office to the field. That's the controllers. That's how we control the irrigation systems. That's how we control different devices in the field. That is also lacking because of no access out in the field. Third is cloud-based software. Okay, and this is not in the future. I'm from Iowa. I'm going to refer to that because we were using a software where a PCA would be out in the field with an iPad, identifying some issue or problem. That feeds in through the iPad, through the cloud. The grower is able to access that. The vendor is able to access that. The applicator is able to access that. CIMAS data comes in through the cloud. All that information feeds in to a central system and then feeds back out. So everybody has the same information and a better decision can be made and it's more efficient. Everybody knows what's going on. I know in one instance that a fungicide is scheduled to be applied on a specific day. The CIMAS data says, hey, no, because of the degree growing days or the chilling days, that needs to be moved automatically back a week. Okay? That's not possible if we don't have broadband or access to wireless communications. Imagery, whether it's be drone or manned aerial systems, is needed out in the field. Farmer needs to know where the equipment is. The drone has the ability to georeference specific issues in real time for the grower. That's not possible without that broadband access. Okay, very quickly, I'm also going to talk about a second issue, and that's limiting education. Okay? We want to be able to, and that goes back to that 29% I talked about, the ones that weren't aware of how we could use broadband. Okay? We have online classes offered to the growers that talk about how do we use this technology. We have precision farming. We have PCA courses. Okay? It's offered online so that it is accessible and available to growers and to local schools. We continually hear stories about, sorry, we can't take that because we have poor access. We would like to take that class, but we can't. We hear stories from my own students that, yeah, I'm taking this class, but for the online portion, I can't do it at home because I don't have access to the internet. So the online portion, they're actually coming into the college to do that portion of it. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of having an online course. Just this morning, I'll use the example, I talked to President Clark, and she said they have students that sit on picnic tables outside their facilities just to be able to access the coursework, the online coursework. We need to make these courses, this education, available to our students where they're at and not have to drive 20, 30 miles to be able to access that, those resources. So again, I'm probably preaching to the choir. There's a lot of different, I think, options that we have, wired, radio frequency, cellular, but this infrastructure has to be there, and right now it's not.
Thank you, Terry. Doctor, you're up.